Hello, my name is Michel Gebbing. I work as a partner technology strategist in the Microsoft hosting team, Western Europe. It's a pleasure to be part in this webinar series of Insight. And today I'm going to talk about a disaster recovery capability which is provided by Windows Server and which is a very interesting opportunity for service providers to provide this as a service to the market. And let's talk about that for the next 10 minutes. But before doing that, I really want to briefly touch upon the CloudOS vision. As you might know, the CloudOS vision allows end customers, our joint end customers, to move to the cloud at their own pace and to allow a hybrid cloud environment where it makes sense. So customers, for example, can choose to keep Active Directory running on-premise. They can choose to move their Exchange environments and their link environments to Office 365 running in the Microsoft data center. And they can choose, for example, to have a certain set of workloads or a large number of workloads running in your data center as their service provider. And by doing that, the customers still have the benefit of a common identity. So he can use, their end customers can use their Active Directory to log into the services that are running on-premise, as well as what's running in the Microsoft data centers, as well as the services running in your data center. So you don't need to set up different username and passwords. It's all supported by a common identity provided by Active Directory. As part of CloudOS, we not only have a common identity, but also end customers can benefit from System Center as their single management environment. By leveraging integrated virtualization, being Hyper-V as their virtualization platform, that's where they can tap into benefits like we're going to talk about today. So let's quickly zoom into a little bit more on that. So for service providers, we as Microsoft basically provides 5 sets of services, which you can see here. And today we're going to zoom into the virtual machine hosting capability. What I really want to say is that we have made a lot of investments with Windows Server 2012 R2, System Center 2012 R2, as well as the Windows Azure Pack, which might be an interesting topic for another webinar. But we've made a lot of investments in services that are relevant for you as a service provider. And you can see a selection of key elements of those investments. You can see that right on screen. And for now, I would want to zoom into, sorry for that. I really want to zoom into hang on. Yeah, I really want to zoom into the multi-node Hyper-V Replica, because that's the Hyper-V Replica service. That's the service that allows the disaster recovery services. And before zooming into that, well, why do you want to have disaster recovery services? It might be pretty clear to everybody, but disaster recovery services basically provide assurance and capabilities in the case of disaster. And it might sound very obvious, but the need for these services are still very prominent. And a couple of years ago, when Hurricane Sandy hit the US coast, a number of data centers had outages for days, simply because their data centers ground levels were flooded by water. It might have not been as dramatic as seen in this picture, but from one case, the data center was, or at least the diesel generators were flooded by water and thus became ineffective, and it took days to restore the service. And basically what you can provide with disaster recovery is a very cost-efficient way to provide disaster recovery services. And it's a growing interesting the interest for these services is growing, probably also initiated by the press and all the the public announcements on these events like these hurricanes. And so basically, your end customers, what they can do is they can expand their data center services and have virtual machines replicated into your data center. The interesting part is that it's a very cost-effective solution because it's running it's provided by a Windows server natively in the box, and it doesn't require investments in additional software capabilities, and it doesn't require investment into specific storage solutions. And therefore, this is a very interesting service that you can provide to your end customers. Now, let's zoom into that a little bit more. As we said, it's an affordable solution because it's provided as part of Windows Server, so you don't need any additional licenses, and it provides disaster recovery capabilities. It basically allows recovery, or it allows recovery points of 30 seconds, 5 minutes, or 15 minutes. That can all be configured. So basically, it provides you can have a replication cycle of and a loss of data of a maximum of 30 seconds. What's also very interesting is that this solution has been designed with service providers in mind. So it runs perfectly over internet connections, but it's also secured. So basically, you as a service provider, you provide your customers with certificates, and the encryption as well as the security is based on those certificates. As said, it's very cost effective because you don't need any storage arrays. It allows migration of a planned or an unplanned failover from a primary to a secondary data center. I think I've indicated that it runs over internet connections, so you don't need high bandwidth. But as we can see, right, there will be an initial replication, and that initial replication depends on obviously on the size of the virtual machine. So that initial replication can take a considerable amount of time. But after the initial replication, all of the additional changes in a running virtual machine, for that only the changes are replicated. So that means that this is really a scenario that allows for you as a service provider to provide these services over the internet. So in the case the primary data center goes down, a planned or an unplanned failover can be initiated to the secondary data center. We have Hostway in the US who provides this as a service to their customers, and basically they provide it in two ways. The first, so the middle box that you see here is that they use Hyper-V Replica to replicate services inside their own data center. So they use it to replicate virtual machines from their primary to their secondary data center. And actually, this is one of the services that another hoster, a SaaS provider in the Netherlands, provided in the same way. They allow their end customers to have a disaster recovery capability in a secondary data center, and they charge 30% premium for that disaster recovery capability. So there you have a very nice and tangible opportunity to have a value add service and generate more revenue. The other example is, as I was talking about before, if you have customers running virtual machines on premise, they can replicate those to your data center. And that's where the internet connection and the certificates that we were talking about before come into play to allow a secure and reliable connection and service. Here you see some other partners who have been using the Hyper-V Replica service, either for their on-premise services or in a more outsourced capability. As a last point, I would like to say there is a great session hosted on the MPN, so the Microsoft Partner Network, which talks about the Hyper-V Replica, but also some of the other benefits in Windows Server and System Center for you as a hoster to grow your business and as well as to increase your operational efficiency. So you're invited to have a look at that session that speaks about the other capabilities. And as a last step, if you want to get started with these services, you can find the link, and you can find the links here on this slide. And with that, I would like to conclude this webinar, and thank you for your attention.